Hey YouTube, thanks for joining me. I am bringing to you another knife first impression. So this is a George MK3, and it's a knife that I've owned for maybe, let's call it, 6 months already. I got it in, I carried it once, and then I just never carried it again. But I did a short on it, and a one of my subscribers had asked me if I could do a review on this. So here it is. I'm sorry it took so long, but I got to it. All for you. Again, thanks for joining me. If please subscribe to the channel. I have a Facebook page and Instagram under Appalachian ATV Rider, all under the same name. And I really appreciate if you can subscribe and join and leave a thumbs up on this video. Moving right along. So this is a George knife. If you know me, I just love George. He makes he's a mid-tech or a custom knife maker, and he's also licensed out a lot of his designs to other manufacturers. And these guys been making knives for a couple of decades now. Just a real nice guy. You can see him on YouTube videos, on interviews, and just a genuine, really nice guy. He does have a focus on military applications. He does a lot of like daggers, fixed blade daggers. Um, and then this is a foray into a folding blade dagger. So let's look at that. Flip it right open. Ta-ta! George MK3 dagger in Magnacut. It's got a thumb disc here for deployment. It's on phosphor bronze washers, which is very typical for George. It's also buttery smooth, silky smooth. Everything, he chamfers everything that he does. He just pays a lot of attention to detail. And I'm talking about the knives that come out of his facility and not the ones that he licenses out. So, but if you buy a knife from George, it's going to come in with not a sharp corner anywhere except for the blade. Okay. And, there's a good opening here. You can see that. I don't know if you can see it. Let's see. Yeah, the frame lock extends beyond this scale here. So you can get your thumb in there. It's super smooth. It just closes real nice. So this is not at a point where it's a drop shut knife. So I'm not even going to show it to you. It's on phosphor bronze washers. This will break in, if I would carry it more. I love George, and one of his knives is dominating my pockets right now. So I have a lot of choices to choose from George knives. So I typically don't choose this knife, and it's because there's other things that I like better of him. But as a knife enthusiast and as a huge fan of George, I had to have this knife. So when you look at it from a design perspective, down here it's symmetrical, and then up here you will see that it's shaped a little bit differently. Now, typically, when you see this shape, that typically will be where the thumb stud would butt up against it and create a knife lockout. It would create stability in the knife if you were to hard use it. But in this case, this is just here, I believe, just as a ramp. So when you grab the knife, your thumb falls right here, and it's almost like a finger guard of sorts. So I like that. The George pays such attention to detail. If you look at it, I don't know if you probably can't see it very well in the video. The tang of the blade comes up to the edge of the scales on both sides. So it's like right here, it's really smooth. It's real perfect. And over here too, everything kind of meets in the same level at one point, and everything's really smooth. There's such attention to detail here and machining, precise machining, to get this to all come together. The tang of the blade, both scales, and the frame lock to come to the right height with the right smoothness. There's nothing here to catch your finger on. It's just great. I love Les George. This guy can't do anything wrong. Well, and that's not true. I'm going to point out some things that I think could be better on this knife. But anyway, let's just do that right now. So what I would like differently on the knife, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it, but I don't like the satin finish on this blade. It just, for whatever reason, with this working finish here or whatever he calls this, and this, it doesn't look great, personally. But that's a matter of taste. It doesn't affect anything other than I mean, I wish it was a different look to it, right? Then the other two things that he does with this knife that are fine by me because of the way I use knives, but they're not ideal, and I just wanted to point it out, is that there's no steel lock bar insert in this knife, which means that this frame lock is titanium, and the end of it, you have titanium up against a steel tang on the blade. So there are two different metals. The advantage to that is it's a little stickier, so that it's less likely to slip. The lock is less likely to slip because it's a little stickier, the metals. The disadvantage to that is that the titanium is softer, and it will wear, over time, over a great deal of time, and it could change the geometry of the knife lockup. Okay, but what they do is they I would say cauterize, but they don't cauterize it. They harden the end of the titanium, and the name can't come to me. You can correct me down below, please, if you'd like to. But they harden the end of the titanium so that the wear is a lot less. And I don't think I mentioned it. This is also a phosphor bronze washer knife. So this is typical for Les George. If you like Les George, if you know anything about Les George, most of his knives are on phosphor bronze. He somehow has got some magic when it comes to this, and a lot of his knives will drop shut. And I have no doubt that this eventually will, because it's long enough and heavy enough, the blade, that you can get that washer smooth enough for it to at least drop down, even with a little shake, right? So, but don't judge it right now, because I'm not really using this knife. All right. So what else about this knife? One of the other things that I don't think is great about this knife is it's not a real ergonomic knife, as compared to a lot of his other knives. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One of them is the end of this knife is, I wouldn't say it's pointy because there's no sharp points at all here, but I mean, there's a point here, right? They're not sharp, but there's points. So when you hold this knife, and it's because it's a dagger, right? That is a dagger shape. So he's making a dagger. This is the visual cue that this knife is a dagger. It's got this bottom to it. But when you hold it in your hand, it's there. You can feel that it's poking my hand a little bit, and the way, depending on how I hold this knife, this clip is actually hitting my hand in a spot that I can feel, right? So this, I would not say that this is a hard use knife. I would not be going out in the woods and trying to chop down limbs or do feather sticking, or working with this knife, especially without gloves. I wouldn't want to do that for a long period of time with this knife. It's just not the greatest ergonomic knife, and part of the reason for that is it's thin. This is a pretty narrow. I don't have a measuring device here, but this is a pretty narrow scale, and it's wide. So it's got this like blocky, rectangular feel to the knife when you hold it. And while it's not uncomfortable, it's just it's just not. It doesn't form to your hand. Another thing that it doesn't have a palm swell. So this is a flat surface here, and so it just feels like like I say, a rectangle in your hand. If they had put a palm swell, it probably would have felt a lot better, And maybe the reason why they didn't do that is because there's a frame lock here, and then how would you, you know, adjust for that? Because when the knife is open, this frame is recessed and it's not really even. And then when you close it, it's even. But if you have a swell, how would that feel in your hand? I'm not sure if that's the reason why or not. I think that could be an area for improvement to make this a little more ergonomic. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. So because of this shape, there's two positions that when I hold this knife, there's two positions that feel comfortable to me. There's this, I'm going to call them both pinch grips. One is top down pinch grip, and even then, I could feel the butt of the knife into my hand if I squeeze it, especially the harder I squeeze it. Duh. And then this other pinch grip feels pretty good, right? This just feels awkward. I mean, I guess that is a grip, and this actually feels pretty good. This grip right here, the reverse grip. So, it's a different shaped knife. So, if you're used to other shaped blades and knives, this might be a little bit of a I'm going to call it a learning curve, but that's not the right word for it. But it'll take a little while to adjust to this. But I can see this being, a perfectly acceptable EDC knife, right? It's got a great steel. Magnacut's an awesome stainless steel that and has got great age retention and toughness, as well as stainlessness. So it's got all the great properties you want in a knife. It's also got an awesome handle. This thing weighs 5.1 ounces. I'm not going to pull the scale out. It doesn't have any weight reduction milling inside the scale, so I think this weight is perfect. There's a lot of people that won't, but I happen to like a larger knife that has a little bit of weight to it, so this is perfect. This knife is falling into the 8.5-inch range, which is just from a size perspective. The blade is just under the actual stock is just under 4 inches, and the cutting edge is about 3 3/4 of an inch. This is a good size knife for me. I love it. Pocket clip is a very typical Les George pocket clip. If you've ever owned a Les George pocket clip, you know exactly what this is all about. It doesn't have a ton of height here in the way it ramps up. Like, it's really narrow and it gets wider and wider, and then the widest spot is really only about that wide here. So sometimes it bunches up your pocket. Pardon me, I'm sorry about the shaking the camera. Sometimes it bunches up your pocket, but this is certainly not a deal breaker. I like his pocket clips. They're not deep concealed. They're wider. They kind of stick out. It's obvious that you're carrying a knife. But regardless of that, these are the pocket clips he uses on all his knives. So it is what it is. I like it. End the story. If you like it or don't like it, that's your choice. And so here, let's talk about the fasteners too. So this is a hard use knife, and this pivot, this is a T20. It's a big honking pivot, and these fasteners are T8s, which are really good. And he does have 3 T6s over here. And if you look at the construction, so you have, the fastening points are the pivot and these two offsetting bolsters here. And then there's a blade stop pin here. And then there's a pin back here. And I'm assuming that's got to be for the lanyard, because it's too close to these to be really structural. There's no attachment. It's probably just a hole inside the scale, and it's pressed together. So it probably won't take a lot of weight to it or whatever. But I haven't taken the knife apart. And with phosphor bronze, you might not ever have to take this apart, right? And especially because it's the materials are stainless and rust proof. You could just wash this off if you had to and blow dry it. And I wouldn't worry about rust at all, like ever. All right, so what do I see the use of this knife for? Well, I certainly think it has it has tactical elements to it. I mean, I guess it's a tactical knife, right? I'm calling this a dagger. I'm assuming it is a dagger, but officially, I'm not sure what he's calling it. But you know, I believe that this is a tactical knife. I mean, it's a pokey knife, right? So it's not. It's it would be able to penetrate because of the way it's shaped. Also, it is a symmetrical shape on either side, and the full thickness of the knife kind of runs. I wouldn't say toward the center. I mean, it's toward the center. It's not on its spine at least. So there's you know strength right down the middle of the knife. It's got a pretty good blade thickness, and the blade thickness runs full thickness all the way to, I'd say, right about here. It looks like, yeah, right about there. And then it gradually gets thinner, but this is a strong tip to it, and there's absolutely no play up or down, left or right, um, no lash. I mean, Les George does this really, really well. And this is the third time I'm filming this, and so I apologize if I'm going to repeat myself, but I'm going to try this one more time. I'm going to repeat myself one more time in case, because I think I missed one of the points. I think I mentioned there's no lock bar insert into this titanium frame here, so this is titanium against steel, but there's also no over travel stop on this lock bar. So you can push this out all the way as far as you can until you break it. Now, it would take a lot of force to do that. So I'm not really worried about that. But if you're in an exciting situation and, like with high energy or, and you grab this knife, you could potentially, push it out too far. So I wish it did have a lock bar insert in there. Over travel stop. I wish it had a lock bar over travel stop. But you can't have everything. So, but this knife is a pleasure to hold. It's a typical Les George. Like when you pick up this knife, you can tell that this is a Les George design. Well, okay. Thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure to do these things for you guys. I hope you're enjoying it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Leave a thumbs up or a thumbs down, depending on how you felt about this video. Don't forget I have a huge playlist of other knife content, and camping gear and motorcycle content is on my playlist, so please check that out. And don't forget to join my Facebook group and my Instagram account under Appalachian ADV Rider, the same name as this YouTube channel. Thanks again, and I will see you next time. Bye.